Welcome to Talk Blaze, where English becomes a story, and every story touches your heart. Here, we don't just teach you words, we bring you emotions, wrapped in beautiful tales of everyday life. Today, let's drift into the world of love, with a story filled with warmth, longing, and connection. So close your eyes, relax, and let the story begin. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in Portland. The kind where the sky was a soft gray sweater, and the city smells like wet leaves, coffee, and quiet dreams. Ethan walked through the campus of Willow Ridge University. Hood up, earbuds in. His sneakers splashing gently through puddles. Lo-fi music played in his ears. The kind that feels like a soundtrack to a moment you don't know you're going to remember. He wasn't looking for anything. Not love. Not a fresh start. Just a quiet semester. A chance to disappear into books, lectures, and library corners. The classroom door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside, the walls buzzed with a low murmur of early morning energy. Backpacks dropping, pens clicking, laptops waking up. The smell of rain mixed with a warm scent of old wood and fresh coffee. He scanned the room for an empty seat. And then he saw her. Last row. By the window. Leaning slightly on her elbow, sketching something in her notebook. Lily. She had this calm about her. Wavy auburn hair tied in a loose bun, strands falling around her face. A soft olive green sweater that looked like it had stories of its own. Her eyes were fixed outside the window, watching the drizzle kiss the glass, like it was telling her a story only she could understand. And then she turned. Just a little. Just enough. Their eyes met. In that moment, something clicked. Not loudly, but quietly, like a puzzle piece falling into place. Lily didn't look away. She just held the gaze, for a heartbeat longer than strangers usually do. And then she smiled. Barely. But enough. Ethan froze for half a second. Was it for him? Was it just a polite smile? Or something else? He wasn't sure. But he knew one thing. The only open seat in the room was right behind her. So he took it. As he settled in, he caught a glimpse of her notebook. A small sketch, a paper boat drifting beneath a cloud, both floating toward the edge of the page. It wasn't just a drawing. It was a feeling. And Ethan felt it too. That this class, this rainy day, was the start of something beautiful. Ethan didn't speak to her that first week. Not once. But somehow, he felt like they were already having a conversation. Not with words, but with moments. She would sit by the window, always with her notebook open, sometimes sketching, sometimes just tapping her pen lightly against the paper. A soft rhythm he began to recognize like a song he didn't know he knew. Ethan always came in early, just to get that seat behind her. He never told himself why, but he started noticing things he hadn't noticed before. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking. The way she smiled to herself when the professor quoted a line of poetry. The way her laugh, quiet and short, felt like a breeze on a still day. They hadn't exchanged a single word, but his entire morning started to revolve around those few feet between them. The space where silence lived like music. She always used blue ink. And even though Ethan usually preferred black, he found himself buying a new pack of blue pens. Just in case she noticed. She never did. Or maybe she did, and chose not to say anything. One day, Lily dropped her pen. It rolled to his feet. He picked it up. Their fingers brushed. Only for a second. But it felt like electricity wrapped in calm. The kind that lingers long after it's gone. Thanks, she said softly, looking right at him. Her voice. It was lighter than he imagined. A little shy. A little kind. Like honey stirred into warm tea. Ethan nodded, smiled, said, sure. It was only one word, but it felt like the door to something had opened, even if just slightly. The next morning, she was already there before him. As he sat down, she turned halfway toward him and asked, "Do you like Emily Dickinson?" He blinked, caught off guard. "Yeah," he said, a little too quickly. "I mean, I'm still figuring her out." She smiled. "I like the way she hides thunder in soft words." And just like that, they weren't strangers anymore. Their conversations grew. Not in length, but in depth. A line here, a smile there, the occasional shared glance when the professor said something poetic. They never spoke after class, never walked out together. But in that room, on that last row, they were slowly becoming each other's favorite secret. And in that silence, a symphony began to play, one only they could hear. It happened on a Thursday. The literature professor had to cancel class last minute. An email arrived just minutes before the bell. But Ethan was already on his way. The air smelled like freshly turned earth, a gentle mist lingering from last night's drizzle. The clouds above weren't in a rush. They drifted slow, like thoughts you don't want to end. Ethan stood outside the classroom door, debating whether to head back or stay a while. That's when he saw her, Lily, leaning against the stone ledge just outside the old campus hall, her eyes scanning the sky as if she were reading it, like it was a poem too sacred to rush through. She didn't look surprised to see him. She just tilted her head slightly and said, "Didn't check your email." He laughed softly. "Nah, I still live in the 1800s apparently." She smiled, that warm, half-lidded smile he was growing to crave. The sky above them turned softer shades of gold and lavender, sunlight dripping gently between clouds like paint from a dream. She was sketching again. A cloud this time. Nothing fancy, just lines and curves in space. Ethan stepped closer. "What are you drawing?" She glanced at her notebook. "I don't know. Maybe just what the sky feels like." He nodded, and then, without really thinking, said, "It looks like it's hiding something." Lily looked at him. Her gaze lingered, like she was deciding something in her head. "Maybe it is," she said. "Maybe it's waiting for someone to look closer." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was soft, comfortable, like when two people read the same page quietly beside each other. They talked for a while after that. About favorite books, how she liked rainy days more than sunny ones, how he once got caught in a hailstorm walking to class and still kept going because he didn't want to miss a reading on Walt Whitman. She laughed at that, not because it was funny, but because it was him. Time stretched, unrushed and beautiful. The bell from a distant hall rang, but neither of them moved. They stood there under that shared sky, not as classmates, not as strangers, but as two people quietly realizing that something small, yet important, was beginning to unfold. And though the sky above was full of clouds, in that moment, everything felt bright. From that day on, things changed, subtly, gently, like seasons shifting. Ethan and Lily started meeting outside class. Not every day, but often enough to make the days in between feel a little longer. It always began the same way. A casual, "Wanna grab coffee?" But by the third time, Ethan didn't even ask. They just walked. Together. There was this small cafe near the edge of campus. Fern and fable. Wooden chairs, mismatched mugs, walls lined with secondhand books, and quiet music playing like a heartbeat. Lily always ordered an oat milk latte. Ethan stuck to black coffee. But every time he saw her sip hers with that slow, content look, he wondered if he should switch. They sat by the window, the same corner table each time. Sometimes they'd talk, sometimes they'd read, sometimes they'd just sit in silence. But even the silence between them had its own language. One afternoon, as golden light spilled across their table, Lily pulled a worn book from her bag. Roomy. She opened it without a word and began to read aloud. "The minute I heard my first love story, I started looking for you, not knowing how blind that was." Her voice, soft and steady, filled the air like candlelight. Ethan sat frozen, not because of the poem, but because of her. The way she read, the way the words seemed to melt on her tongue, the way his name suddenly felt like it belonged somewhere in those verses. He pulled out a book too. Pablo Neruda. He didn't read it aloud. Not yet. But he opened it to his favorite line. "I love you as certain dark things are to be loved. In secret, between the shadow and the soul." He didn't say it. But somehow, Lily looked up, as if she heard it anyway. Over the next few weeks, their cafe visits turned into quiet rituals. Books were exchanged like secrets. Quotes were texted without context. and every time their fingers brushed as they passed a cup or a pen, Ethan felt like he was holding a spark wrapped in skin. One evening, as they left Fern and Fable, the sky was dusky pink. Lily looked up, sighed, and said, "I like people who speak in poetry, even when they don't realize it." Ethan looked at her, and in his chest, 1,000 unsaid poems waited for a single word. There was no single moment where Ethan realized he was falling in love. It wasn't dramatic. There were no violins, no butterflies exploding in his chest. It was slower, gentler, like water filling a glass, one quiet drop at a time. It happened in the way she tilted her head when listening, the way she used her sleeves to wipe fog off her glasses, the way she sometimes whispered lines from books, as if she didn't mean for anyone to hear them. And Ethan, he started noticing the world through her. He began seeing poetry in ordinary things. The way light moved through leaves, how coffee steam curled like smoke signals, how rain on a window felt like a conversation half forgotten. They weren't dating. Not officially, but their world was slowly folding into each other. She'd bring him poems scribbled in margins. He'd leave her little notes on napkins. Nothing too serious. Just quotes, thoughts, winks between the lines. He once wrote, "You feel like the start of something I don't want to end." She never mentioned it, but the next time they met, she wore a paper boat pin on her jacket, the same kind she once sketched in her notebook. He noticed. Of course, he noticed. On campus, they still sat in the back row. Still two separate people on paper, but between them, a quiet current pulsed stronger every day. One afternoon, a sudden downpour trapped them outside the campus library. They ran beneath the trees, laughing as they tried to dodge raindrops. But eventually, they gave up. Soaked, breathless, Lily leaned against the wall, her hair dripping, her smile wild. "You look like a soggy poem," Ethan teased. "And you look like a boy in love," she said back. Almost too quickly. Then she bit her lip, like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. Silence. Not awkward. Just charged. Ethan looked at her, his heart suddenly louder than the rain. But he didn't say anything. Not yet. Instead, he simply stood beside her, close enough to feel the warmth through the cold. And Lily, she didn't move away. The rain kept falling, but inside that moment, everything felt still. Safe. Right. There are moments that stretch time. Not because they last long, but because they mean something. More than the minutes they occupy. More than the words they carry. Ethan and Lily were in one of those moments. It was a Saturday, late October. The leaves in Portland had turned into flame. Burnt orange, deep red, soft gold. And the air carried the scent of cinnamon and stories. Lily had invited him to the Fall Street Fair. It wasn't a big deal, she'd said. Just warm cider, vintage stalls, a few local bands playing near the old bookstore. But to Ethan, it was a big deal. Because it was the first time it felt like they weren't just almost something. They were something beginning to bloom out loud. They walked through the fair slowly, brushing shoulders more than once, neither of them pulling away. They shared roasted chestnuts, laughed at a man juggling pumpkins, took photos with a Polaroid camera at a booth run by a woman with pink hair. The picture came out crooked, Lily's eyes half blinking. But Ethan kept it in his wallet anyway. As the sky deepened into dusk, the air turned cooler. Lily wrapped her scarf tighter around her neck. Without a word, Ethan offered her his jacket. She hesitated, but then took it, her hands brushing against his again. Soft, deliberate. They found themselves standing beneath a string of fairy lights, beside an old record shop playing vinyl through the open door. Something slow, something classic, something that made people sway without meaning to. Lily turned to him, her face soft, glowing in the golden light, hair gently messy from the breeze. "Dance with me," she whispered. Ethan's heart stuttered, but he didn't think. He just nodded. They stepped into the open, right there in the middle of the fair. Two people slow dancing between booths and book carts and cider stands, as if they were the only ones there. She looked up at him, eyes steady, unblinking, and suddenly, the world faded. All he could see was her. His hand found hers. His other hand rested just above her waist. The music wrapped around them like silk, and then, She leaned in. Just a little. He did too. Closer. Closer. He could feel her breath. Warm, sweet like apples and secrets. And just when their lips were about to touch, someone bumped into them. A man carrying caramel popcorn. Apologizing too loudly. The spell broke. They stepped back, startled, laughing awkwardly. But the air between them. It had changed. The kiss didn't happen. But it almost did. And sometimes, an almost kiss is louder than the real thing. The week after the fair felt quieter. Not just in the world, but between them. Ethan still texted. Lily still replied. But the rhythm had changed. Like a song skipping one beat too many. They still sat together in class. Still shared notes. Still smiled. But the space between their chairs felt wider. As if something invisible had settled there. Something fragile. Something unnamed. Ethan told himself it was nothing. Just school. Midterms. Life. But deep down, he knew. It was the almost kiss. That breath of closeness. That heartbeat they almost shared. Maybe it scared her. Maybe it scared him too. Sometimes, falling is beautiful. But admitting it, that's where it gets hard. He started second-guessing every word. Was he being too much? Not enough. Had she felt it too? That almost. And Lily. She was different too. Still sweet. Still thoughtful. But softer. More cautious. She started leaving class quickly. Saying she had to meet someone. Or study. Or just go. Ethan never asked. He didn't want to sound like he needed her to stay. But he did. He really did. One rainy afternoon, he walked into Fern and Fable alone. The barista, a girl with a pixie cut and a knowing smile, asked, "Where's your usual poetry partner?" He just smiled back. "She's busy." He sat at their table anyway. Same seat. Same view. Only this time, the chair across from him stayed empty. He pulled out a notebook and wrote one line. It's strange how someone can feel close, even when they are slipping away. Later that evening, he received a text. "Lily, I miss coffee with you." It wasn't a grand confession. Wasn't a poem. But it meant something. It meant she felt it too. The shift. The ache. The wanting. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Then typed, "Ethan, me too. Saturday." Her reply came seconds later. "Lily, I'd like that." And just like that, the silence cracked open. Just enough for a little light to pour through. Saturday came with a sky like silk. Pale blue. Soft clouds trailing like thoughts left unsaid. Ethan arrived early at Fern and Fable. As always, he wore the same jacket he'd lent her that rainy day. Still smelling faintly of coffee and memory, he chose their table. The one by the window. The one that had held so many almosts. At 10:17, the bell above the door rang. She walked in. Lily, hair loose, notebook in one hand, eyes searching, then softening as they landed on him. "Hi," she said, and somehow it felt like a whole conversation. They ordered, sat, smiled. The small talk came easy. Classes, the weather, a funny video she saw. But under it all, something quiet pressed against their words. Finally, Lily set her cup down. Her fingers traced the rim slowly, eyes not quite meeting his. "I've been thinking," she said. Ethan's heart kicked. "Yeah." She nodded, took a breath. "That night, at the fair, I almost kissed you." He blinked, didn't move, didn't breathe. Then he laughed, softly. "Lily," he said, "I was going to kiss you." Her eyes lifted, met his, and in them, a whole ocean moved. "Then why didn't you?" she whispered. Ethan leaned in, voice low. "Because I wasn't sure if you wanted me to." Silence, but not the awkward kind. The kind that hums with truth. "I did," she said. Then she smiled, small and sad. "But I panicked. I've never felt this way before. It's like you're in my thoughts when I don't want you to be. Like I remember your laugh in the middle of lectures. And coffee doesn't taste right unless you're there." Ethan's fingers inched closer to hers across the table. Not touching. Just waiting. "I thought I was imagining it," he said. "This thing between us." Lily shook her head slowly. "You're not." And then, without a plan, without a cue, she reached across and took his hand. Warm, steady, real. No music played. No fireworks exploded. Just that gentle, powerful stillness. Two hearts choosing each other. At the same time. "I like you, Ethan." He smiled. "I like you too, Lily. Like, in a storybook kind of way." She laughed. That light, bell-like sound he adored. And as they sat there, hands entwined, coffee cooling beside them, world soft around the edges, Ethan knew something had changed. The waiting was over. This was real. The next morning arrived gently. Sunlight filtered through Ethan's bedroom window like a soft secret. Golden. Unhurried. The kind of light that feels like a blessing, not a beginning. He lay still in bed, his thoughts quiet but full. Last night replayed in his mind in slow motion. Every word, every glance, every breath between them. The kiss. He could still feel it. Not just on his lips, but in the way his heart moved now. Like it had found a rhythm it never knew it needed. His phone buzzed. One new message. "Lily. Morning. Still thinking about last night. Hope that's not weird." He smiled. Typed back. "Not weird. Beautiful." A pause. Then another buzz. "So, what are we now?" He stared at those words for a moment. It was a fair question, but also a delicate one, because what they were was still unfolding. Like a poem only halfway written. "Whatever you want us to be," he replied. "But I know I want more of last night. More of you." Typing bubble. Then her reply. "Come over. Let's figure it out together." She lived just a few blocks away. A cozy little apartment above a bookstore, with ivy curling around the windows and a wind chime that whispered when she opened the door. When Ethan arrived, she was in socks and a sweater 3 sizes too big. No makeup. Hair messy. She looked like the inside of a love song. "Hi," she said. He stepped in, closed the door behind him, and without speaking, they hugged. Longer than they ever had before. Not rushed. Not unsure. Just real. She pulled back slightly, looking up at him. "I made pancakes. I burned the first 3, but the 4th one kind of looks like a heart if you squint." He laughed. "I love burnt pancakes." They ate on the floor, plates on a blanket, music playing low in the background. Fleetwood Mac, maybe. Something vintage and full of feelings. Halfway through breakfast, Lily grew quiet. "I don't want this to be a phase," she said. "I don't want us to be one of those stories that gets lost between pages." Ethan took her hand. "We won't," he said. "Not if we keep writing it together." She nodded, her eyes glassy with something like hope. "Then let's do that," she said. "One page at a time." And for the rest of that morning, they didn't talk about labels, or timelines, or what happens next. They just lived it. Fully. Tenderly. Ethan helped her clean the dishes. Lily put on socks with tiny stars. They danced in the living room. Badly, but with joy. They lay on the floor, tracing invisible shapes on the ceiling. Every little thing felt meaningful. Like a secret only they understood. That morning didn't end with grand declarations. No rose petals. No orchestras. Just laughter. Warmth. And a kiss that said, "We're here. And we're choosing this. Whatever this is. It's ours." Falling in love in private is one thing. But bringing love into the world, that's a different kind of brave. The following week moved with a quiet current beneath everything. Ethan and Lily still had classes, assignments, and schedules. But now, there was something new running alongside it all. A soft undercurrent. An invisible thread. They were still learning how to be together in public. The first time they walked into the campus cafe holding hands, it was instinctive. Not planned. But Lily paused, just a step before the door. "What if people stay?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "Then they'll see something worth staring at." She laughed, and the sound dissolved her nerves. They stepped in. It was strange at first. Friends raising eyebrows. The barista doing a subtle double-take. Even their English professor smirking slightly during roll call. when she saw them sitting side by side. But no one said anything cruel. No gossip. No whispers. Just a low buzz of curiosity. It was Ethan's friend Jonah who finally said something, leaning in during a group project and murmuring, "So, you and Lily, huh?" Ethan didn't flinch. "Yeah," he said, without hesitation. "Me and Lily." Jonah grinned. "Good for you, man. She's great. You look lighter, you know." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. So he just smiled, because it was true. Later that evening, they met at the park again. Same bench under the oak tree. A little colder now with November's breath settling in. Lily brought 2 cups of hot cocoa. Extra marshmallows in Ethan's. "I feel like I'm still getting used to this," she said. "People seeing us. Knowing." "Is that okay?" he asked softly. She nodded. "It is. Just new." They sat quietly for a moment, watching a little girl chase leaves with a red balloon in hand. Then Lily said, "I told my sister." Ethan looked over, surprised. "Really?" "Yeah. I sent her a photo of us. The one from the fair, remember? The blurry Polaroid." He grinned. "I love that photo." She texted back 5 heart emojis and said, "About time." They both laughed. Being seen was scary, but it also made everything feel more real. They started building small rituals. Thursday night takeout on Ethan's couch. Lily always stealing the last fry. Sunday mornings in the bookstore below her apartment, her head resting on his shoulder while they flipped through poetry books. The way Ethan started showing up at her place with tea when she had a long study day. The way Lily left little notes in his notebooks. "You're doing great. I believe in you." Coffee later. Smiley face. Everyday moments. Nothing dramatic. But together, they were stitching a life. A real one. Still, not everything was perfect. They had their first small disagreement too. About weekend plans and missed texts. It ended with a long walk around the block, neither of them speaking. But when they stopped, Lily looked at him and said, "I don't want to fight with you. I just want to understand you." And that changed everything. They talked. Really talked. Not to win. Not to prove. But to understand. And when they hugged afterward, Ethan thought, this is what being in love looks like. Not perfect, but chosen. Every day. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a whisper in the middle of a noisy world. That was what the next few weeks became for Ethan and Lily. A season of quiet magic. The kind you don't always notice in the moment, but later realize were the best days of your life. It started with the way Ethan began leaving a hoodie at Lily's place. Not because he forgot it, but because she kept wearing it when she missed him. "It smells like you," she'd say, nuzzling into it like a memory. And Lily, in return, started keeping a jar of Ethan's favorite granola in her pantry. Even though she never ate it herself. These weren't grand gestures. They were small, soft, intentional, like how she always kept the left side of the couch open, because that's where he liked to stretch his legs, or how he learned her coffee order, almond milk, 2 pumps of vanilla, never too hot, and got it right every single time. They had a favorite spot in the library now, tucked behind the philosophy section, where hardly anyone ever went. It became theirs. Sometimes they'd sit there for hours, each with their own book, barely speaking, just legs brushing, fingers occasionally finding each other between pages. It was simple and beautiful. There was one night that stood out. A rainy Tuesday, nothing special. Lily had a headache, and Ethan showed up unannounced with her favorite peppermint tea, a microwavable neck wrap, and a playlist he'd made just for nights like this. They sat in her bed, the room lit by a single salt lamp, soft orange glow painting the walls like watercolor. She leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for showing up like this." He kissed the top of her head and replied, "I don't know how not to." That was the night they both realized. This wasn't just something sweet. It wasn't infatuation. It wasn't just butterflies. It was rooted, steady, real. The magic wasn't in the fireworks. It was in the brushing of teeth together, in folded laundry, in shared silence that didn't feel empty. Even the nights they fell asleep on FaceTime. phones propped on pillows, breathing in sync. Those were sacred in their own way. Love had found its rhythm. Not a sprint, not a spark, but a song that played low and steady beneath everything else. They didn't say "I love you" yet, not because they didn't feel it, but because they wanted the words to land softly, not just spill out in a rush. So instead, they said it in other ways. Text me when you get home. Did you eat today? Hey, wear my scarf. Tell me if you need space. And somehow, that felt even more powerful. Ethan started journaling again. Pages full of her smile, her laugh, her strange obsession with lavender-scented everything. And Lily, she started writing poems again. Only this time, they weren't about longing. They were about belonging. Some words change everything. Not because they are loud, but because they carry the weight of everything unspoken. It had been nearly 2 months now. Since that night. The kiss. The choice. Ethan and Lily had found a rhythm. Easy and warm, like the pulse of a familiar song. But some feelings don't sit quietly forever. They grow. They hum beneath the surface, waiting to be heard. It was a Friday night in December. Cold enough to see your breath, but not cold enough to stay inside. Ethan picked her up from her apartment, wrapped in layers and holding 2 cups of cocoa. They were going to the Winter Lights Festival downtown. It was Lily's idea. "I want to see something beautiful," she'd said. "I want magic." She didn't know. She was already holding it. The streets were lit in soft gold and icy blue. Strings of fairy lights hung from every tree. Shop windows glowed with hand-painted snowflakes and glowing ornaments. They walked side by side, his glove brushing hers. Every now and then, he'd glance over, just to watch how the lights reflected in her eyes. She looked, wonderstruck, like she was made for this kind of night. At one point, they wandered into a quieter street, lined with paper lanterns. There was a small bridge over a frozen creek, and no one else around. The world felt still. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled something out. A tiny snow globe. Inside, a miniature bookstore with soft golden windows. He handed it to her. "For when I'm not around," he said. "So you remember what we're building." Lily's fingers trembled slightly as she took it, not from the cold, but from the way her heart fluttered. She looked up at him, and for a moment, the only sound was the wind whispering through pine trees. Then she spoke. "I love you, Ethan." Just like that. Not dramatic. Not rehearsed. Just true. He didn't say anything for a second. Not because he didn't feel it, but because the words hit him like sunlight after a long storm. And then he smiled. Slow. Soft. The kind of smile that only lives in the presence of truth. "I've been carrying that in my chest for weeks," he said. "I love you too, Lily. So much, it scares me." She laughed, that little nervous laugh that always came when her heart was too full. Then she stepped in closer, pressing her forehead to his. "No need to be scared," she whispered. "You're safe here." They stood there for what felt like forever, wrapped in each other, in love, under a sky full of light. The walk back was different, lighter, their fingers now laced in full confidence. Not just comfort. She leaned her head on his shoulder as they waited for the streetlight to change. He kissed her temple without a word, and somewhere between the glowing lanterns and the warmth in her chest, Lily realized something important. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's just steady, like 2 people walking side by side, into a world that now felt just a little softer, because they had each other. Love can feel like a dream, until you bring it home. It was just after the holidays when Ethan invited Lily to meet his family. Not for anything huge, just Sunday dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and his mom's famous apple pie, the kind with the sugar-crusted edges. Still, Lily felt her hand sweat the second he mentioned it. "Are you sure?" she'd asked, stirring her tea absent-mindedly. Ethan took her hand gently. "My mom already asked if you were coming. I think she likes you more than she likes me." That got a laugh out of her, but her nerves didn't vanish, because love is one thing, but meeting the family, that's walking into someone else's story, and hoping you fit. The drive to his parents' house was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Lily wore her favorite soft blue sweater, The one Ethan once said made her look like a breath of sky. She clutched a small box of cookies she'd baked that morning. "What if they don't like me?" she asked as they pulled into the driveway. "They will," Ethan said without hesitation. "But even if they didn't, I'd still choose you." That made her heart settle. Just a little. His mom opened the door before they could even knock. "Lily," she beamed, pulling her in for a hug. "I feel like I already know you. Ethan doesn't stop talking about you." Lily blushed, laughing nervously. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and fresh herbs. Family photos lined the walls. A golden retriever napped in the corner, and the dining table was already set, mismatched plates, a candle flickering low. It felt warm, lived in, safe. Dinner was filled with easy conversation. His dad asked about her studies. His little sister, Grace, grilled her on everything from favorite movies to zodiac signs. "Are you gonna marry my brother?" Grace blurted at one point, mouth full of mashed potatoes. Ethan choked on his water. Lily blinked. And then she laughed. Hard. The whole table did. And in that laughter, something shifted. She no longer felt like a guest. She felt like she was part of it. After dinner, Lily helped Ethan's mom with the dishes. "I'm glad he has you," his mom said gently, handing her a towel. "You bring him back to himself." Lily swallowed. Words caught in her throat. All she could do was smile and nod. Later that night, as they drove back, the sky was ink dark. Stars scattered like freckles across the heavens. Lily sat quietly, one hand on Ethan's knee. "You okay?" he asked. She looked over at him. "I think your family just made me love you more." He reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Good," he whispered. "Because this, you and me, it's the realest thing I've ever known. The hardest part of love isn't falling in, it's holding on when distance stretches between heartbeats." Ethan's internship offer came sooner than either of them expected. It was in Seattle, a major media company. Exactly what he dreamed of. Except now, he had something else in his life. Someone he didn't want to leave behind. Lily smiled when he told her. Genuinely. Because she was proud of him. Because he deserved it. But behind that smile was the quiet echo of something breaking. "When do you leave?" she asked softly. 2 weeks, he replied, eyes not quite meeting hers. They sat on the floor of her apartment that night. Pizza untouched. TV playing some rom-com they weren't watching. Ethan finally spoke. "We'll be okay, right?" Lily turned to him, brushing a strand of hair behind his ear. "Of course we will," she said. "We're not the kind of love that fades." The days before his flight passed like sand through fingers. Too fast. Too full of goodbyes. They spent every free second together. One last bookstore date. One more walk through the park. Late nights tangled on her couch. Talking in whispers, memorizing each other's breathing. The night before he left, Lily gave him a notebook. Inside were pages of handwritten letters, each one titled, "For when you miss me." For when you're sad. For when you're doubting everything. Ethan read the first one at the airport, tears slipping past his sunglasses. The first week apart felt like learning how to breathe underwater. Time zones. Spotty calls. Text messages that felt too short. Too cold without her voice behind them. They did what they could. Voice notes before bed. Virtual dinner dates over video calls. Even synced playlists they listened to at the same time. But some days hurt more than others. Like when Lily got sick and Ethan wasn't there to make her tea. Or when Ethan had a rough day at work and couldn't fall asleep without hearing her heartbeat. They fought, too. Miscommunications. Loneliness that turned to frustration. Calls ending in silence. But the next day, there was always a message. Always a soft return. "I'm sorry. I miss you. We're okay." Because they both knew. Love wasn't a straight line. It zigzagged. It stumbled. But it moved forward. Always forward. 3 weeks in, Ethan sent her a package. Inside was a small Polaroid. The two of them at the fair. The same photo Lily had once sent her sister. On the back, he'd written, "This isn't just a memory. This is a promise. I'm coming back to you." And Lily, she framed it, placed it right beside her bed. So it was the first thing she saw each morning. Because even when they were miles apart, she still felt him. In the space between heartbeats. In the way the wind whispered through the trees. In every love song that sounded a little too real. Sometimes, love feels like holding your breath. And coming back. That's the exhale. Ethan had been gone for 71 days. 2 months and change. But to Lily, it felt like a lifetime, measured not in weeks, but in missed hugs, unsaid jokes, and nights that felt too quiet. He didn't tell her the exact day he'd return. Said he wanted it to be a surprise. So she waited, checked her phone more than usual, slept in one of his old t-shirts, kept that snow globe he gave her beside her pillow. Every day she'd whisper to it, "Come back to me." And then, one Saturday afternoon, she walked into her favorite bookstore. The little one tucked near the corner of Oak and 7th. The one with the creaky floors and the coffee that always smelled like cinnamon. And there he was, standing in the poetry aisle, back turned, thumbing through a book like he had all the time in the world. At first, her brain didn't catch up. She thought she was dreaming. Then he turned and smiled, the kind of smile that made her knees go weak. Like time folded in on itself. She dropped her tote bag, books scattered, but she didn't care. She ran, right into his arms, right into home. Neither of them said anything for a moment, just held each other, heart to heartbeat. Ethan buried his face in her neck. "I miss the way you smell," he mumbled. "And I missed you," Lily whispered, tears slipping down her cheek. They stood there, swaying slightly, like they were dancing to the sound of their own relief. He finally pulled back, hand still on her waist. "I didn't want to tell you when I was coming," he said. "I wanted to see your face when it happened." Lily laughed through her tears. "You're lucky I didn't scream." That night, they didn't go out. No fancy dinner. No elaborate plans. They went back to her apartment, ordered Thai food, watched reruns of old sitcoms with subtitles on. But it felt like the most magical night of her life. Every touch was electric. Every glance, heavier, fuller, warmer. And when they curled into each other under her favorite blanket, Lily looked up at him and said, "I don't think I realized how much I needed you here. Until you weren't." Ethan brushed his thumb over her cheek. "You never need to feel that again," he said. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." Later, as they drifted off to sleep, legs tangled, heartbeats sinking again, Lily whispered, "Promise." Ethan kissed her forehead. Soft, certain, forever. Love doesn't always bloom in fireworks. Sometimes, it grows like roots. Quiet, strong, unseen beneath the surface. After Ethan came back, life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still dishes left in the sink, texts left unread, mornings where neither of them wanted to talk. But something had shifted. The love between them wasn't just exciting anymore. It was safe, solid, like a lighthouse in a storm. They began spending more weekends together. Grocery shopping, walking the dog. Lily started pet sitting, cooking mismatched meals from Pinterest recipes. Their lives slowly started to intertwine. Ethan had his side of the closet at her place. Lily kept her favorite mug at his. One Saturday, they planted a small herb garden on her apartment balcony. Basil, rosemary, mint. "Let's grow something together," she'd said. "Something alive." And they did. Not just plants, but habits, moments, routines. They started having long talks about the future. Not in a way that made either of them panic, but in soft, wondering tones. "Would you ever want to move to the West Coast?" Lily asked one night. Ethan thought for a second. "Wherever you are feels like the right coast to me." She threw a pillow at him for being cheesy. But later that night, she wrote the sentence in her journal and underlined it twice. One evening, after watching a sunset together at the lake, they lay on a picnic blanket in the cooling grass. Ethan turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Do you ever think about what it'd be like if this was forever?" Lily didn't need to think. "I think it already is," she said softly. And it was true. Because love had stopped being a feeling. It had become a presence, a thread running through their days, holding them steady. Of course, there were still disagreements. Like when Ethan forgot to text for hours and she thought something was wrong. Or when Lily got overwhelmed at work and snapped at him for no reason. But they always came back. With apologies. With understanding. With arms open and egos set aside. Because they knew. Love wasn't about being perfect. It was about choosing each other. Even when it was hard. One quiet Sunday morning, Lily looked over at Ethan. Barefoot in the kitchen. Singing badly to some 90s pop song. As he flipped pancakes. And she felt her chest swell with something bigger than butterflies. It was peace. It was belonging. It was home. Some days, the world whispers. Others, it shouts. And when it does, love must decide how loud it wants to be. It started with a job offer. Another one. Ethan got an email from a well-known digital agency in Chicago. Bigger pay. More exposure. A shot at something major. He stared at the screen for almost an hour before calling Lily. "Do you want it?" she asked, voice steady. "I don't know," he admitted. "But everyone says I'd be crazy to turn it down." Everyone. Everyone had started chiming in lately. His friends. His mentors. Even his parents, who had warmed to Lily completely, still asked. "What about your career, Ethan? Don't get too comfortable too young." And Lily, she was hearing it too. Her sister wondered if she was losing herself in the relationship. A coworker once asked if she was sure Ethan supported her ambitions. And just like that, the outside world began to creep in. One night, they sat on the rooftop of Lily's building. Wrapped in a blanket, city lights flickering below. Neither of them spoke for a while. "I don't want to be the reason you stay," Lily finally said. "You're not," Ethan replied. "But you're the reason I'd want to." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "I want you to chase your dreams, Ethan. But I also want to be in them." He reached for her hand. "Then let's build them together." But it wasn't that simple. Over the next few weeks, the pressure built. Deadlines. Family expectations. Friends asking, "What's next?" Lily found herself journaling late at night, wondering if love was enough when the world demanded so much more. Ethan started skipping hangouts, avoiding career talks. Not because he didn't care, but because he was tired. Tired of being told that love was a detour instead of a destination. And then came the real test. Lily was offered a grant, a full ride to a prestigious graduate writing program. In Boston. She told Ethan over coffee. Neither of them touched their cups. "I want to go," she said. "I know," he whispered. They both stayed at the table, each afraid the silence between them might grow too wide to cross. That night, Ethan showed up at her door. Not with flowers, but with a map. A big, laminated map of the U.S. Covered in marker dots, scribbles, lines. "I mapped it out," he said. "Flights, weekend trips, hybrid work options. I talked to my boss. We can do this." Lily blinked, speechless. "You're not trying to stop me." "No," he said, voice unwavering. "I'm trying to meet you, wherever your path leads." And in that moment, she knew they were different. Not just in love, but in partnership. They weren't clinging to each other. They were growing toward each other, even when life pulled in different directions. The world was loud, but they were louder, in all the ways that mattered. Some goodbyes are heavy, dragging behind like luggage full of unsaid words. But others are light, because they carry trust. The day Lily was set to leave for Boston, the air felt different. Not somber, not panicked, just still. Like the universe was pausing for a moment, holding its breath with them. Her flight wasn't until afternoon, but Ethan was already waiting outside her apartment at 7 a.m. 2 coffees in hand, and that familiar crooked smile that never failed to undo her. He didn't say much, just handed her the cup, kissed her forehead, and sat beside her on the steps. They watched the sun rise together, shoulders touching. Lily finally broke the silence. "So, this is really happening?" Ethan looked at her, eyes filled with something soft but strong. "It is. And I'm so damn proud of you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "And I'm scared." "I know," he said. "But we've done this before." She smiled. "Yeah. But back then I wasn't in love with you like this." That made him pause. made him turn fully toward her. Like what? She searched his eyes for a second. Like I can feel you inside my chest, even when you're not around. Like your absence is louder than noise. He swallowed hard, then took her hand. I feel that too, he said. But Lily, this time, we're not just surviving the distance. We're owning it. At the airport, the goodbye wasn't tear-soaked. It was intentional. They stood across from each other, surrounded by strangers saying rushed farewells, but their moment was still. Sacred. I want you to write everything, Ethan said. Every late night, every lecture that makes you question yourself, every little Boston moment. I want to read all of it. Lily nodded. And I want you to send me photos. Not just your work. You. Your face. Your smile. The coffee shop you love. I want to see your world while I'm building mine. He kissed her gently. Soft. Slow. Memorizing. Then, with a playful smirk, he whispered, Don't fall in love with some bookish professor. She chuckled. Only if you don't fall for your new assistant. And then, it was time. They hugged once more. Long and warm. The kind of hug that doesn't beg stay. But promises. I'll wait. On the flight, Lily sat by the window, watching the clouds blur below. She didn't cry, because this time, she wasn't leaving something behind. She was carrying it with her. In every breath, every heartbeat, every dream. Ethan wasn't a pause in her story. He was the undercurrent. The steady beat that would echo through every page. And as her plane ascended, he stood in the parking lot below, watching it fade into the sky, smiling. Because this goodbye, it didn't break them. It built them. Love isn't always held in arms. Sometimes, it's carried in words. Typed at midnight. Sent between cities. Read beneath blankets in the hush of dawn. It started with a single email. Subject line. From me to you, and a little bit of Boston. Lily wrote it the night she arrived. After hours of unpacking and trying to make the cold walls of her student housing feel like home. There were take-out boxes on the desk. Her suitcase half unzipped. And a postcard of the Boston skyline taped to the wall beside her bed. She wrote, I walked past a bookstore this evening that smelled like yours. The same old wood floors. The same tiny bell above the door. I thought about you standing in the poetry section. I think about you all the time. Ethan replied the next morning. I went by the lake today. Sat on our bench. Some kid was feeding ducks with his dad. I didn't feel sad. Just still. Like you were there too. Sitting next to me, legs tucked under you, sipping chai. And just like that, their love found a new rhythm. They started writing every day. Not just texts or quick updates, but letters. Long, thoughtful, tender. Lily wrote about her professors. The one who quoted Rumi in lectures. The one who made her believe her words mattered. Ethan wrote about work. The frustrating pitch meetings. The client who reminded him of her. The one who asked if he was always this thoughtful. And he smiled because he knew who made him that way. They swapped playlists. Shared dreams. Told each other their worst fears in the soft, trusting dark. Lily admitted she sometimes felt like she didn't belong there. Among people who used big words and carried heavy books like armor. Ethan told her he sometimes felt like he was standing still, while everyone else moved forward. And in those letters, they reminded each other. You are exactly where you need to be. You are enough. More than enough. Every Friday, they had virtual date nights. They cooked the same recipe from across 2 kitchens. Lily once accidentally burnt the garlic bread. Ethan tried to make pasta from scratch and nearly set off the smoke alarm. But they laughed, took screenshots, wore matching pajamas one night just for fun. And when the calls ended, they'd each sit in the quiet, smiling at the ceiling. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. One night, after an especially long week, Lily's voice cracked on their video call. I miss being next to you. I miss your hands. Your warmth. Ethan didn't try to fix it. Didn't say, we'll see each other soon. He just whispered, I know, baby. I miss you too. But this, all of this, it's only making us stronger. She nodded, wiping tears. I write better when I miss you, she said. And I live better knowing you're out there doing what you love. Two cities, one love story, threaded together by keystrokes, phone calls, and the kind of longing that doesn't weaken, but deepens. They weren't apart. They were expanding, widening their love to fit new dreams, new selves, and in every word they sent, they found each other again and again. Some moments don't need music. They carry their own rhythm, made of heartbeats, hurried footsteps, and the soft click of a suitcase on pavement. Ethan hadn't told Lily he was coming. He knew her class schedule, her favorite coffee shop, the route she walked from campus to her tiny off-campus apartment. He knew the way she sometimes tilted her head when lost in thought, how she paused in front of a used bookstore every Thursday. So when he stepped off the train in Boston, cool air biting at his cheeks, he wasn't nervous. He was ready to see her, to feel her, to remind his arms what home felt like. Lily had just finished a long seminar on storytelling through memory. Her brain was buzzing with metaphors and narrative arcs, her notebook half filled with scribbles and quotes. She'd pulled her scarf tight against the wind and was walking, head down, toward her apartment. And then she saw him, leaning casually against the wall of her favorite bakery, beanie on, a single sunflower in hand. Her breath caught. For a second, the city blurred, like time paused, just for her. "Ethan," she whispered. He smiled, wide. The kind of smile that said, "I missed you, I love you, I'm here, I'm real." And before he could say anything, she ran into his arms, sunflower crushed between them, tears soaking into his hoodie. They stood like that for a long time. No words, no audience, just them, back at her apartment. They didn't rush. She made tea. He kicked off his shoes and stretched out on her tiny couch, like he belonged there, because he did. She curled up beside him, legs tangled, head on his chest. "I can't believe you're here," she whispered. "I needed to feel you," he said. "Emails and calls, they weren't enough anymore." She closed her eyes. "I was starting to forget the way your skin smells." He kissed the top of her head. "Well, here's a fresh sample," he said with a grin. "And a suitcase full of hoodies for you to steal." They spent the weekend like they were living in a dream. They visited museums and pretended to be art critics, walked hand in hand along the Charles River, pausing only to kiss when the wind wasn't too harsh. He read her poetry in bed, softly, voice cracking once or twice. She cooked him breakfast in mismatched pajamas, eggs slightly overdone, toast perfectly golden. They made love slowly, like the world outside didn't exist, like their bodies were remembering a language they hadn't spoken in months. On their last night, they sat on her tiny balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching the lights of Boston shimmer like fireflies. "Why does it hurt so much to say goodbye again?" she asked quietly. "Because this time, we know what we're losing, even just temporarily." She turned to him. "But it's worth it, right? This love." He didn't hesitate. "Every damn mile, every missed call, every ache, it's worth it. Because it's you." She smiled, and though tears welled again, they didn't fall. Because beneath the sadness was something deeper. Faith. Love isn't just in the arrival. It's in the leaving, too. When someone walks away, but leaves all of themselves behind. And Ethan, he may have taken the train back, but his heart, it stayed with her. Some stories burn slow, but others, they ignite. Lily's second semester in Boston began with a spark. It was a cold January morning, the kind that paints frost on windows and turns sidewalks into mirrors. She had just submitted her short story, a deeply personal piece about long-distance love and the quiet ache of waiting. Her professor, a Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist known for his brutal honesty, had said very little when she turned it in. Just nodded, slowly, and said, "We'll talk about this next week." Lily spent the next few days in anxious silence. But then, during a quiet Thursday workshop, he read aloud the opening line of her piece. "Some people wait for trains. Some people wait for sleep. But I wait for his name to light up my screen." A hush fell over the room. When he finished reading, he looked up at her. "There's fire in your voice," he said. "It's time you let it burn." Everything changed after that. She was invited to read her work at a university literary event. A publisher asked to see more of her writing. Students stopped her in the hallway to say how much her story moved them. And Ethan, miles away, watched it all unfold through glowing screens and glowing words. She sent him videos of her readings, clips of applause, texts filled with disbelief and joy. I can't believe they felt something real. I think I'm actually good at this. Ethan responded with pride that spilled over. Of course you are. The world's just finally catching up to what I've always known. But in the quiet corners of his mind, a flicker of something else. Not jealousy, not resentment, fear, not of her success, but of being left behind by it. Back in Chicago, Ethan's days were steady but flat. Same office, same projects, fewer sparks. He tried not to feel it, the growing gap, not between them, but between who they were becoming, in separate spaces. During one late-night call, he asked, "Do you ever feel like you're outgrowing me?" Lily blinked, startled. "What?" "Ethan, no. You're rising. I feel it. Everyone sees it. What if one day you don't need me?" She sat up, her voice sharp, but soft. "Don't you get it? You're in every word I write. When I speak, it's your love that gives me the courage to say it loud. You didn't hold me back, Ethan. You handed me the pen." Silence. Then his voice, low, thick. "I just don't want to be a chapter. I want to be the book." Her breath caught. "Then stay. Stay with me, through every sentence." They began writing together. Not stories, not essays, but a shared document they called Us, a work in progress. Sometimes they added lines as jokes, sometimes memories, sometimes wishes. "I want a dog. Big one. Named Pretzel. I want a cottage with 2 desks and 1 bed. I want a future where we're not catching up, just catching each other." And in that ever-growing page, they found a way to keep building, together. Lily's voice was on fire, and Ethan, he was the matchstick that lit it. Some love stories have soft winters, snowflakes, scarves, warm cups and whispered goodnights. But this winter was brutal, not because of the cold outside, but because of the silence between them. It started with missed calls. Lily's schedule exploded after her story was picked up by an emerging literary magazine. Meetings, readings, late-night writing sessions. She was flying high, but also burning out. Ethan's job had taken a turn, too. One of his company's biggest clients dropped unexpectedly. Deadlines piled up. He started pulling 14-hour days, surviving on caffeine and replays of Lily's old voice messages. Their once nightly calls turned into, "Sorry, can we talk tomorrow? Missed you again. Babe, I'm crashing now." The document they shared, Us, a work in progress, remained untouched for over 3 weeks. Then came the argument. It was a Tuesday night. Rain in Chicago. Snow in Boston. 2 tired souls, too full of emotion, and not enough grace. "Ethan, you didn't even tell me about the LA offer." "Lily, I was going to. I just needed time to process it myself." "Ethan, so you're deciding alone now." "Lily, I'm trying to survive, Ethan. Not everything is about us." The line went quiet. Too quiet. Then, in the softest, most painful tone, he asked, "Is there still an us?" Lily didn't answer right away. Her throat tightened. And that silence, that single second, it cracked something. They didn't speak for 4 days. Not out of spite, but out of confusion, pain, fear. Lily sat by her window every night, reading Ethan's old letters. Her LA offer emails sat unopened. She couldn't bring herself to picture a life even further away from him. Ethan walked by the lake, past the bench where they once sat today. Snow covered the path. Everything looked still, except his heart, which felt like it was unraveling. On the 5th day, she called him, voice trembling. "I hate fighting with you. I hate being scared of losing you," he said. "Then don't be," she whispered. "Please, I need you to believe in us." "I do. But Lily, we have to learn how to grow without growing apart." She nodded, tears running freely now. "I don't want LA. Not if it means leaving you in pieces." Ethan exhaled. Relief. Love. Regret? No. You take LA. You rise, baby. Just let me figure out how to rise beside you. That night, they opened their document again. Title: Us, still in progress. They added 2 new lines. Love isn't always easy. Sometimes it's a choice made in silence. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can say is, I'm not going anywhere. They didn't fix everything in one call, but they remembered why it was worth fixing. Because love isn't just passion. It's showing up, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, especially then. Some endings don't feel like endings at all. They feel like beginnings. Not with fireworks, not with grand speeches, but with a quiet moment, a heartbeat, a breath, a question. It was a Sunday morning. Sunlight slipped gently through the curtains, casting soft gold across their tiny living room in Erie. The scent of cinnamon and coffee drifted through the air. Lily stood by the kitchen window, wearing one of Ethan's oversized t-shirts, cradling her favorite mug, the one he bought her on their first trip together. Ethan watched her from the doorway. She looked peaceful, whole, like every line she'd ever written had led to this. He walked over, kissed her shoulder, and whispered, "Close your eyes." She raised an eyebrow, grinning. "Why? Are you hiding pancakes behind your back?" He chuckled nervously. "Just close them." She obeyed. A heartbeat later, she felt his hand gently take hers. And then, something small, soft, velvet. Her eyes fluttered open. A tiny, midnight blue box sat in her palm. Simple, unassuming, but full of everything. "I don't have a speech," Ethan said, his voice unsteady. "No slideshow. No crowd." He took a deep breath. "I just have 1,000 little reasons. For every coffee stain, every sleepy call, every page we wrote and rewrote. For the way you see stories in the cracks and make me believe that maybe I'm one worth telling." He knelt, not with perfection, but with truth. "And because, Lily," his voice cracked, "I don't want another sunrise without you. Or another Sunday where your laugh isn't echoing off these walls." She stared, tears building behind the softness of her smile. "Will you keep writing this with me? Forever?" Lily didn't speak right away. She just dropped to her knees, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered against his chest, "Yes, to all of it. To you." They sat there on the hardwood floor, sunlight painting halos around them, hearts louder than any yes ever spoken. It wasn't the ring, though it was beautiful. It wasn't even the proposal. It was the journey, the pages before this one, the doubt, the distance, the choosing, over and over again. Later that night, curled in bed, Lily pulled out her phone and opened their old document one last time. Title: Us, the final page. She typed, "He asked me to marry him today. I said yes. Turns out, the best stories don't end. They just keep becoming something more." Ethan leaned over, smiling. "Want to change the title?" he asked. She looked at him, eyes warm. "No," she whispered. "Let's leave it." She paused, then added one more line. "To be continued." Microphone hash, and that, dear listener, is the end of our story, but not the end of their love. Thank you for spending this hour with Talkblaze. We hope you felt the heartbeat, the poetry, the ache, and the joy. Because love, in all its forms, is the greatest story we'll ever tell. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your stories alive.